I'll tell you what, I'm having a day. I
Not
am I
on the most
entitled to a
favorite
day,
day of the
Precious?
week. You are entitled to a day. You work
Yeah.
hard. You're entitled to a day. I give you permission. Take the rest of the day off.
It is my son's 10th birthday, so we had
Happy
birthday
birthday.
brunch and stuff like that. I wish I could take the entire day off, but obviously
Bring
there
the
are certain
calls.
obligations. Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. So, but Saturday we're gonna go do some extra stuff too, so that'll be fun.
Gotta get out. You gotta enjoy family time.
Yes. So he kind of gets like a birthday week, so maybe it works out for him a little bit better that way.
Hey,
Uh,
look, we just did the same thing with my 7-year-old, because his birthday was in the middle of the week and, he's in the first grade. So this time last year, COVID shut down schools right before his birthday. So he
yes.
didn't get to do had the class sing happy birthday. Like he missed out on that whole experience. So this year, it was super important that he got to, do all that stuff. So
Yep.
yeah, I mean, when you're that young and you're like, hey, it's all about me, you got to make it count, man.
Yeah, yes, yes. I make it at least a little memorable as much as you can, adapt and overcome and whatnot.
Yeah.
Tony's a little irritated. I haven't even done the intro, and Tony's like, "You're not entitled to a 20-minute late start." So I guess I have to do a mea culpa and all the rest here. Regardless of any other circumstances. Yes, we do try and stick to a good schedule here, but we are live. We're talking about something fun. We wanted to do a little bit, kind of more of an open conversation today. Before we get rolling with that, a reminder: this is Sell Like a CPCU. We are put on by volunteers from the Agent and Broker Interest Group from the CPCU Society. And always remember, like, comment, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell, retweet, share this out there. We're going to have some fun today, but also share the other stuff too that is like really informative and tips and tricks and sales stuff.
You're saying some of it's not fun? I think we're
Some
always
of
having
it
fun.
isn't. I mean, some of it's a grind, but success, like winning is fun. I like
Oh yeah,
winning. That's usually good.
that's my favorite. Yes.
Yes. So today we're talking about our top 10, I guess I'll call it favorite, sales and marketing influencers that we follow. So I think you took a little bit more of like an insurance approach to your list, right?
Yes.
Okay, and I took a little bit more of maybe a kind of like complementary approach. So this should work out pretty good because we'll get a decent mix. And I might actually have to cut a number out because I think I have like 11 on my list. We're only going to do 10 total. But
Yes.
so, how about you kick us off, Precious? And before you kick us off, anyone who is watching live, Tony, if you're out there live, whoever's watching live, you can always share your favorites in the comments too, or
Yes.
share comments about the people that we're talking about as well, if you would like. Just don't be disparaging. So, go ahead, Precious. Go kick it off.
Awesome. So I will say that this subject, we thought of this, relatively last minute, and so I cheated a little bit on my homework. I kind of put some feelers out and kind of asked some of the people that I highly respect, hey, who's on your list? You know, and so there's a little bit of, I don't want to say pushback or confusion, but like the term influencer, like what does that really mean? We're talking about like someone who's out there blazing a new trail, there's some big disruption, like what makes an influencer versus some of the kind of pillars, of sales thought that already have just been very persistent in our industry. So I kind of went back through my social media, to be perfectly honest with you. I went through my LinkedIn, I looked at hashtags, I was trying to think of what content do I follow. When certain people speak, I stop and I listen, right? And feeding myself things that are relevant to the industry, to the role of sales. And so that was kind of my inspiration, for putting the list together. So I'd be remiss, I think right now in 2021, one of the names that just jumped out top of mind, just synonymous with sales, it's got to be Gary V. So I don't know if you have him on your list or not. Like I feel like we're playing it's like
he
a
was
card
he was
game
one of
here.
the one of the first ones that I put down. So what kind of What makes you think about him in terms of his, like, how has he been? Let me say this: how has he kind of been influential to you, because
Okay,
he has a wide range of things that he does for people or inspires in them.
absolutely. Yes. So I will say, just again, contextually here, right? I follow Gary Vee on LinkedIn. I
Okay.
think the LinkedIn version of Gary Vee is a little bit more PC, is a little bit more
PG
cleaned up.
13. Yeah.
Yes. Right. It's a little bit, it's safe for work, when I
Yeah.
play it out loud kind of thing. Because his language does tend to get colorful. And I am a little bit old fashioned. And so, him and how he presents in that, a stage is really kind of what I follow more consistently. The approach, right? Because I think back to, years ago, or even not that many years ago, going to sales conferences, buying books, and it all being it came across very stuffy. And the
Yep.
thing that was really difficult for me early in career with sales was, how do I take this and how do I emulate this, but in a way that's authentic to who I am, right? And
Hmm.
so,
Hmm.
some of the stuff, you got to have a power stance and you got to grip their hand. And, it just was, it really didn't, resonate with me. And so I like his very, again, brutally honest, just very simplistic approach. And so, following him on LinkedIn or on any of the platforms, a lot of the stuff that he puts out there are just, again, small, digestible pieces
Hmm.
of just really common sense stuff.
Hmm.
A lot of the clips that I watch are him, speaking to a larger audience or a crowd. There was actually, again, someone else I'm connected to on LinkedIn who's from the Dallas, Texas area. He went to go, I think, straight out of college. He went to go hear Gary Vee speak, and he shouted something out from the audience, and Gary hired him like on the spot. So it was
Wow.
crazy. Yeah, because it was like this guy's first big gig, like straight out of college,
Yeah.
And so that was, again, part of the appeal was just the no nonsense, no fluff, no sugarcoating. Like, hey, do it,
Yeah.
get it done, don't overthink it.
Yeah. No, I love that about him. He what he really did for me was he kind of got me inspired about sales.
Hmm.
So a lot of the jobs I've had, to like your point, it wasn't necessarily kind of like the sales coaching and things like that were necessarily the issue. It was more so just the people I was surrounded by. It might have just been I had been in sales jobs that were just crappy sales jobs. I don't know, or bad organizations, but he's really he's one of the first people that really kind of like made me almost like the phrase is act as if, right? Like, and he's like, he is not this giant or titan. I mean, like, he's short, like he's a little dude, right? But he walks around like he could, knock the biggest guy out. That's if they flapped up some dust with him. So I think that kind of that was the biggest thing. And then just to your point, like the little hacks and the tools and the tips and the tricks. Like one of my favorite things to talk about that he is big on is taking one piece of content, like taking a long form piece of live content like this,
Hmm.
and chopping it into little segments or stripping out the audio and making a podcast out of it. All of those little tips and tricks are things that I employ every single day in my personal sales and marketing and stuff like that. So yeah, no, he's a big one.
Or
Um,
even just the concept of getting past kind of this perfectionist approach that I think we take to content,
yeah.
that the content is looked at for its own merit, right?
Hmm.
It
Hmm.
doesn't have to be super polished. It doesn't have to be, I think one of the presentations, one of the first kind of slideshows, because he does a lot of those,
Yep.
that I had tapped into, was this whole concept of just having this regular habit of cranking out something
Hmm.
every day, and not
Yes.
being lazy about it, not just copying and pasting it and just kind of the exact same thing across all platforms. Understanding the nuances that how you present on IG is going to look different than Facebook, is going to look different than LinkedIn versus Twitter, because if you start to just duplicate it, just copy and paste it, you lose
Yep.
people, right?
Yes.
Especially people that follow you potentially on multiple platforms, because it just comes across very just cookie cutter, and again, it does. And so, like I started the conversation saying, his LinkedIn persona
Yeah.
is the one that resonates with me. And so, because especially, jumping in front of a camera, getting on social media, we tend to want to edit it or overproduce it.
Hmm.
And I think what a lot of people are looking for is that on the authenticity.
Yes.
So that encouragement to just, hey, you're going to make mistakes, but that's how you evolve.
Yeah.
And it's funny how you go back and same can be said for what we're doing now. If we pulled earlier episodes, it's like, oh, okay, we got better at that. We added that. Things but you got to have a starting point.
Yes. Yeah, most definitely. And yeah, to your point, he's also a big proponent of, great being the enemy of good, right?
Oh
Like
yeah,
just do it. Like jump in the
just do it.
pool, like figure it out, like at least crank something out, right? Um, to that point, there was actually someone who was on. This is funny. Like you said, like you took a little bit more of an insurance tilt. I took a little bit more of a not, and now like we've kind of switched positions because the first one of yours wasn't specifically insurance. Mine is going to be specifically insurance. So Ryan Hanley, believe it or not, is one of the first people, and some people have differing opinions about Ryan, but he's one of the first people that I actually started listening to just before I started my agency. And the things that he was saying were more millennial type things about insurance and insurance sales. And that was completely new to me, right? Like, so I don't think I would ever classify as like Gary Vee or even some of the other people on my list. I don't even know if I would classify them as millennial. Most of them are Generation X or older. Ryan was one of the first ones that was kind of talking about social selling and some of these things that he had done that were, not traditional insurance sales techniques. So the one that he talks about is, kind of just doing a video every single day on YouTube for like a month or 60 days or something like that, and answering a question from their client base. He had a family agency and asked their client base, like, what do you want to know? Like, what do you still not understand or haven't had explained to you?
Right.
And one of those posts, one of those videos, ended up selling like $100,000 in premium for a post that I believe cost him absolutely nothing to put out there. It was like just a little bit of time, right? And so to that point, Ryan's done a lot over his career and he's moved to a couple of different places. I think he's kind of taking a better tact now because he came from his own agency, or not his own agency, his family agency in upstate New York, did some like sales and marketing stuff for industry companies that were trying to like do things that were revolutionary. And now he has started his own agency. So it's almost like he's kind of like taking two steps back to, further cement his position, showing that like, I've gone from zero to, building an agency of, a certain size as kind of this like proof of concept kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
What are your thoughts on Ryan? There's not like a universal opinion, actually, for most of these people. But
Yeah.
what were your thoughts on Ryan? Have you ever kind of engaged with his content before?
Yeah, and to your point, I think that what he's done, was definitely kind of blazing this trail and making these insurance-centric conversations more mainstream.
Hmm.
And because it's only here really recently, at least that has been on my radar, being able to, again, within the scope of, okay, there's sales and there's certain obviously sales things that are really agnostic, like they apply to all industries. The best practices, you can take them anywhere, right?
Yeah.
But his focus and his approach and the relatability and that appeal to, like you said, the up and coming generation who's stepping into this space, trying to figure out our way of getting it done, which may look different than the agency principles that built out some of these legacy agencies that are around. I do think that it's always healthy and it's always beneficial when you're able to walk it out.
Yeah. Yes.
It's one thing to be, kind of that Monday morning quarterback where you can go back and say, oh, look, they've got it all wrong because this isn't happening. But when you're right there, boots on the ground, and you get to really kind of test theories, like unrelated. There's a show that I watch that me and my husband enjoy watching, it's a, Food Network, Good Eats, right? And so, Alton Brown, that show's like old.
Yeah.
That show's like, early, mid 90ish, I think is maybe when it came out. And so they did a reboot. of the show here not too long ago. And I thought it was really cool because when they did the reboot of the show, he would show older episodes and then he would kind of speak up when he had a change of heart on
Yeah.
stuff. He was like, yeah, I presented this to you guys, but after the fact, looking back, let me just kind of like pick apart and, update, where I currently stand on some of these, recommendations. And so, yeah, anytime you have content that's evergreen, that, is going to kind of age well and stand the test of time, or that you get to, reapproach from a slightly different perspective, I mean, it's growth. So absolutely, hands down, one of the innovators in that space.
Yeah, there's also a level of authenticity there where one of the key things that I've heard echoed by a lot of people is if you're going to advocate for something in public, don't make it something that you've never engaged with or like, a tool or something like that you've never done yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like never promote something that you've never used or anything, because then the moment it doesn't work as someone told you it works, secondhand, you're going to have people that are going to, now identify you as disingenuous and not authentic.
They'll drag you.
I can still remember from Alton Brown, no unitaskers. We don't want any unitaskers in the kitchen. You always have to have multiple uses for a tool, I think was always one of his best things, or one of the ones I took home from him. All right, so we got Gary V, Ryan Hanley. Who's your next? Who's number 3?
I didn't know that we were like force ranking this here. I thought we were just...
No, it's not in any specific order. Not in any specific order.
Okay. It's really interesting that, again, content that I subscribe to, stuff that I follow that really helps me be a better professional day in and day out. So this one is a little bit more, niched and a little bit more personal. But, the next person on my list is Meg Mckee. So we had Meg on our show.
Get out of my head.
Absolutely adore, what she does, most specifically, because again, a niche and a niche and a niche, right? So we've got insurance sales, and then, a lot of her content and a lot of her coaching, that she provides with her company is really, especially the women in insurance,
Yes.
Because I think that there is, there's a different set of things to, consider. There's some, common ground there, certain approaches, because a lot of the insurance sales stuff that exists does tend to lean very kind of masculine, Yes. Again, it's very, like you said earlier, like I mentioned, the power grip and the steering mod, some of those sort of things. But, by really tapping into, instead of trying to recreate the wheel, and like you said, come across very, just, what's the word I use all the saccharine, right? So it's sweet, but it leaves that bad aftertaste.
Yes.
When you try to emulate and you try to be what doesn't fit, it just doesn't resonate well. So Meg does an amazing job of, just kind of opening up these safe spaces for conversations to be had, so that you can do some introspective, looking and deciding, what do I have that, I think, what raw material can I pull forward and really refine and excel in the role. So, she's definitely next on my list.
Yeah, and as far as like authenticity goes and street smarts and having like walked the walk, Meg checks all those boxes. I mean, it's a credit to her that she's working as a consultant for agencies a while kind of running a sales organization in the industry. So that is a huge plus, or a huge gold star on her lapel, because that is something that she's like, again, it's one of those things where it's not like you're professing like something you heard from, 2 steps away. You're actually, almost kind of like, your memoirs are what you're basically talking about, and kind of the advice that you're giving, So I love that about her. And, she's also just a fantastic presenter that's not, I would say, to your point, like, it's not testosterone and gasoline and over the top and like, like all this like explosions in the background. It's not that. It's common sense, straightforward, controlled is the way that it goes, which, by the way, sales is like, I get where a lot of these folks come from in terms of like trying to be that ultra like type A masculine, like go hunt and kill kind of thing. but sales has a lot of need for control as well. Like last week we talked about dealing with rejection. Like, you know, the wild animals that are out there don't deal with rejection very well. Like that's just, you know, or maybe they do, and maybe humans are very bad at it, because when you take that ultra, you know, testosterone-y kind of perspective into a situation where you do get rejected or you fail or something like that, you know, that can turn into destructive behavior, not positive, you know, bridge building or you know, setting up for future success. So yeah, I definitely appreciate that about her. All right, let me see. I'm going to go old school here. I'm going to go old school for one. A friend of mine had me, and this is like sacrilegious. I had never read this book, okay? Up until maybe about 12 months ago, right? Very beginning of COVID time, all right? Dale Carnegie's How to Make Friends and How to Win Friends and Influence People, right?
Yes.
It is some of the things in there. This is an older book that's been reprinted numerous times. And some of the things that are in there, even just needing small tweaks, still are correct to this day. So, like, for instance, one of the things he talks about in the book is almost kind of like a Sun Tzu kind of, you know, art of war approach to things, where in certain situations, you being right is less important than reaching a good result, right? And so there are some of these aspects of his process that he goes through, his tips and tricks that are like, you know, check your ego at the door and figure out how we get to the best result at the end. Like, you know, who cares if you get to beat your chest that you were right if at the end the sale falls apart or the relationship goes away or you take a hit to your brand or something like that. And so there are just tons of tips and tricks included in that book, as well as other, you know, kind of Carnegie writings and classes and all kinds of stuff that are out there. So had you ever read that one? Did you okay, did you kind of like take away the same thing that I did, or was there something different in there?
Yeah, I think it just boils down to, again, introducing that, you know, the relationship centric psychology piece to sales, you know, how you make people feel comfortable, how you develop deeper rapport, you know, trust, you know, all of those elements that are absolutely necessary when we're making decisions on who we want to do business with. And so those, again, are concepts and approaches that will they're not faddish. And that was also a big thing. You know, this isn't about doing some sort of fancy, you know, Jedi mind sweep. This isn't about having some awkward, you know,
you will buy the cyber liability insurance.
Yeah, whoever speaks next loses, and you know, some of that stuff that, you know, again, and to your point, you know, in 2021, what's applicable, what's relevant, looks completely different than what it did, you know, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And so being able to extract that stuff that has aged well, you know, people to people relations will never go out. That is the whole premise of what we do. Yes, you know, speed to market is important. Yes, you know, competitiveness in terms of pricing is important. But the relationship piece of it, it's not going anywhere. So that's definitely one of those, you know, that's like 101. Like you have, that's table stakes. You got to read that. So I'm shocked, even through like your MBA studies and all that, that it never came up as required reading.
No, you know what it is? It's so, I don't want to use the word abused. I mean, it's just so ubiquitously like quoted and everything like that everywhere that I almost felt like, oh, well, I've basically read the book because, you know, I've heard everyone talk about like all these quote squares and stuff like that about things that Carnegie said. But truthfully, reading the book was so much more valuable than any of that, because it also puts it into the context, because there is personal stories about, you know, Carnegie having interactions with people or people going through his MBA classes that hammer it home, right? And like give you proof of concept, and they also give you proof of how to actually deploy it. Like there's also a ton of people out there that have like these 10-step programs, but they don't tell you how to actually enact the steps. It's just like, do this, you know? And so that is completely different. But yeah, no, I think it was just one of those things where it was kind of like, you know, I had kind of become tone deaf to it or something like that, because just everyone is like Dale Carnegie, Dale Carnegie, Dale Carnegie. And I'm like, okay, enough already. Like, you know,
it's kind of synonymous, like with Covey, right? Like the whole Stephen Covey, stuff, and you, like I said, the seven, what is it, 7 habits and that sort of thing, that you hear it so much and it almost becomes part of the culture, right?
Yes.
That you kind of, it loses sometimes its impact because it's sound bit to death.
Yeah. Well, and not to mention the fact that the problem is that it's so sound bit to death that some of the people that are now kind of like regurgitating it never read the book.
Yeah.
And they're kind of like misrepresenting what it means, or they don't have a full grasp of it either. So that did also kind of like, once I sat down and thought about it, compelled me to actually, read the damn book. So
so I guess that basically means for this generation, someone's gonna have to TikTok it.
Yeah, just like 45 seconds at a time, basically.
Exactly.
Yes.
Like just get it in so that people absorb it. No, there's no shortcut to reading it. So no, that's one of the staples for sure.
Yeah, definitely. What do you got?
Yeah, with it's interesting because I am, again, of the old school. I like a actual tangible book. I don't ebook well. I don't audiobook well. That's my confession. So I'm all about, highlighting and doggy earring. So I don't pass along many of my books. I usually kind of keep them and hold on to them. Yeah. But in this rapid fire environment of, the information superhighway and there's stuff coming at you from all sort of places, when I find something that's like the library worthy, I buy it and it definitely, goes on the shelf. But most of this stuff, in terms of just staying, like keeping my finger on the pulse of what's happening, I am very social media reliant on that kind of thing. So with that being said, again, in this space of, insurance sales, and again, another name that's no, stranger to, our circles, Kelly Donahue Hero is on my list. So
she was on mine too. Darn it!
We're playing. We got some bingo, squares. Like, yep, I caught it. Stamped your card.
Wait, what was it? The $1 million pyramid or whatever like that. We're mind melding. That's good.
There you go.
So, what do you like about her? You like her, her 2-minute videos or whatever that she emails out?
Yes.
Yep.
So I subscribe, I follow. Again, I think that is really important for, all of this stuff. If it doesn't resonate with you, if it doesn't help you either decide on having an identity, right, and then leaning into it, so much of her content is about how do you shine where you are, right? And so if you're inside of an agency, if you're in a role, you can still show up very authentically in your full self into that role. There's no lesser roles. I mean, we've had those conversations in terms of sometimes the hierarchy inside of, more traditional agencies where, oftentimes there's this tendency or this temptation to start off when people ask you what you do and you say, I'm only. I'm just the CSR. I'm just the account manager. I don't really impact the bottom line much. My stuff is just very monotonous and routine, and breathing new life into that. So the work that she does, between the content and, of course, the, consulting work that she does to really help everyone understand that they own a piece of the greater success, I think is really helpful, especially in these environments, because oftentimes some of these roles, they may be a professional's first real participation in our industry. And so it's make or break. Either you stick and stay because you fall in love and this is what you'll do forever, or sometimes you're just turned off by something that's, small because you didn't feel like you had impact or meaningful, transactions. So so I love her for all the above.
Yes. Yeah, no, 100%. I was lucky enough to do one of Tony Conyas's podcasts or vlogs with Kelly, and we talked about wide-ranging topics, but a lot of it had to do with hiring and keeping good teams, right? Like good people, good teams, and things like that. And her insights are extremely poignant. And they're not these kind of like beat to death rote insights that everyone seems to always kind of regurgitate. She has, again, some personal hands-on experience with these things. She's going in and seeing the way a lot of agencies are operating or failing to operate well, and using those beats to really help out other agencies that are out there. And it runs the gamut, like compensation and bonus structure and incentives that go beyond just pay and things like that. Internal culture type issues. So yeah, no, and believe me, that like couple minute video is brilliant, because so many of us, like, just finding 5 minutes during the day is a difficult thing. And so having an extremely bite-sized but highly concentrated, valuable piece of content just delivered to you every single day it's fantastic. It's absolutely fantastic. And I can tell you that, I get, you'll probably find this out if you haven't already. I get tons of email marketing things on a daily basis, just having my name listed as an owner of an agency. Hers, I'm always opening because I know I'm going to get value out of it. And it also doesn't have like, sneaky, clickbaity titles like, wouldn't you love to make $1 million this next month? Well, yeah, who wouldn't? Okay. Like, no, it's always high impact type stuff, which is fantastic. So, let's see. There's a couple of different ways I can go on this one. Let's see. There's a couple here that just like everyone knows, so that when I say it, they'll be like, like he copped out, But I can tell you. So I'm gonna take this one. You might have this on your list too.
Okay.
So one of my favorite sales talks is probably something that most salespeople have seen. And it's the Golden Circle talk that Simon Sinek gives. And just the idea of how certain successful companies focus on much different things than other successful companies. So in a world where there's competition and like tons of just like, we got to be the first one, or we got to be the top to the mountain and things like that. He was like, there's this other breed of companies that succeed, and they succeed knowing that they're running the race, but they don't run the race the same way. Like, they run the race really caring about why they're doing it. And they're running the race more on this kind of like, I wouldn't call it metaphysical, but it's more this philosophical kind of like fuel that fuels them, right? So, the example of Apple never even really mentioning Microsoft or the other competitors that's out there. They're more talking about, okay, like, what do our customers need and want, or what's something that they don't know they want yet, right? Like, they're thinking on a completely different astral plane than the other competitors that are in the marketplace, that are more of this kind of like factory mindset, where it's just like, the next thing, incremental improvement, make it slightly more efficient. And they're like, let's do something insane and out in left field. It's like that visionary component to it. So, did you have Simon on your list as well, or no?
No, I actually didn't. Yeah, but everything you said is just spot on. I think sometimes too, with certain inspiration and influencers and stuff, you read it and you just want to like, put on a helmet and like just charge your wall, right? You're just like, you're all pumped. You're like, oh my God, I got to get out here and get it. And you're like, wait, how can I do that? And so it's always funny because, with certain, like you said, approaches to sales and, innovation and those sort of things. And then I kind of come back and I'm like, insurance, how do I I'm really not in a position. I can't like change product. So you're like, oh, I might have to sit this one out. No, but but no, like you said, but the thinking, right? Always, instead of just, working at getting better at a handful of skill sets, say, hey, who said that these are the complete and total list of ways to get it done? How can I get out and meet different people in a different setting? How do I identify more sales triggers and things that help me not just connect with them, but connect with them during a time frame where they're making a buying decision and they have the ability to pay for said decision. And so I cringe when again and I get it, because it is reality, right? It's a numbers game, and every no gets you to your next yes, and you're just supposed to like burn through stuff until you get to a good one. And I'm like, no, these are real insureds. These are real opportunities. These are real businesses. These are real people. There's no sandbox for me to just test my theories. you know, all of this is live. We're live all the time. But yeah, thinking outside of the box is critical, because if not, if you don't evolve, it's either evolution or extinction.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You know?
Yeah. And he helps inspire, at the very least, that kind of like the evolutionary thinking, right? Like the let's not just paint ourselves into a box because we always assume that we're in the box. And to your point, living in a highly regulated industry like in insurance, sometimes those crazy harebrained ideas just, they won't fly unless you want to end up in stripes in jail somewhere. At least it kind of puts you in that mindset. And even if you don't find, the next amazing, Tesla-esque, solution for insurance sales or something like that, at least you're kind of keeping their mind open to that mindset and not, losing perspective or kind of like chopping down your world. I think you mentioned it earlier, like a lot of us put mental barriers on ourselves. There's not actual barriers other than the ones that we put on ourselves. And so he kind of gets you out of that, where he kind of like wants you to at least wade into that kind of like, awkward, like scary, outside your comfort zone kind
Just
of
try it. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. So, all right, awesome. What do you got next? We got how far are we good? We got Gary V, Ryan Hanley, Meg Mckee, Dale Carnegie, Kelly Donahue Pyro, Simon Sinek. So we're at 6. We got 4 left.
Okay, so my next contribution to this list is, again, a LinkedIn connection of mine. I think that's how I stumbled across his content, because, like I said, just crossing these common paths. So his name's Charles Spect, SPECHT. And so his company is Permission Network Insurance Agency. And the tagline, which drew interest, is on LinkedIn. It says, helping insurance agents build $1 million book of business through signed broker of record letters. I was like, you've got my attention, so following his content, and a lot of the videos are on YouTube as well. He talks about, there was actually a video that he did a couple of months ago, which I thought was really profound, about who kind of survival of the fittest in 2021. And a lot of that is going to involve, like you said, stretching beyond our comfort zone, going after larger accounts than maybe we've traditionally done. And, how do you really lean into specializing in stuff? So his take on things, I think he has little thumbnails of some of the videos, is really interesting. He talks a lot about, are we using the best use of our time re-quoting stuff that's up for renewal, when what we really need to be focused on is convincing them why they want to, in his words, not mine, fire the incumbent and hire us. Right. That's ultimately, beyond pricing, sometimes even beyond coverage form, that relationship, especially when you're starting to dip your toe into some of the larger accounts, the relationship is the most important piece. I kind of started following and reading, and, he has, of course, some courses and some deeper dives into, a lot of the stuff that he's put out there. But I thought that was brilliant, convincing people, how do you identify a niche where you can specialize, where you're not in a crowded room anymore? How do you go after the business? How do you build that rapport? So again, it's not going to be for everyone, but just even exploring that school of thought, like, why am I, taking this and assuming that just because the incumbent has a certain market, that market is inferior? Maybe the plan is not moving them to a different market, just moving them to do business with me.
Yes. Yeah. I have seen his name. I haven't seen a ton of his, or haven't engaged in a ton of his content. But I've definitely heard of him in the industry, as well as just kind of like online, which is awesome. It looks like he's got a ton of content that he puts out too, which is good. And his face looks familiar too, so I bet I have seen him somewhere, like maybe on someone else's podcast too, which is entirely possible. But
And
yeah,
like
no,
when I
that
connected with him on LinkedIn, I think he and I share like some 150 on mutual connections.
mm,
So, like I said, he runs these circles, he's a CIC. And so, again, he's coming from a position of, firsthand experience and
yeah,
best practices to share, which it hits different, right? It just
mm,
resonates different when you're listening to someone who's actually road tested this stuff instead
yeah.
of creating it in a lab and trying to roll it out, and convince you that it's viable. So
Yeah,
yeah.
and he's in a good space because the BOR is like the holy grail of insurance sales. I mean, it's that's the beauty because I say this phrase a lot and I tell people I'm like, look, pick your horse, right? So like don't waffle and go back and forth and things like that. Like judge the options based off of your perception or maybe even some valid assessments of their skill and how you feel comfortable with them, and don't run them side by side because as insurance agents we just kind of trip over each other and cause a big mess.
Hmm.
And that BOR process is the climax, the zenith of that actual kind of thought process of whether or not you're gonna try and hedge your bet and have multiple people out there screwing up the marketplace at the same time, or if you're gonna pick someone or an organization based off of how comfortable you feel with them and how good of a relationship you have with them. So yeah, no, I think that's fantastic.
Now the
um,
caveat though that I always remind people, a BOR doesn't necessarily mean renew per expiring. The
yep.
BOR gives you permission to really get into it and get your hands in it and figure it out, right?
Oh yeah.
Because until you've got that signed BOR, you're speculating on somebody else's policy.
Yep.
And it's really dangerous because I don't know the ins and outs. I don't have the underwriting file. I don't know how it came to be.
Yep.
But that is, in the purest sensitive form, is giving you permission to proceed. That's them saying, I want to work exclusively with you. I trust your judgment, And so, because I've had that, debate, that spirited debate before, as far
hmm
as inheriting potential E&Os, because you don't know how it was written and how it was set up. And so, it's not the lazy way. It's again, especially if you represent that market. And you can
Yeah.
say, hey, I'm familiar with it. I know the ins and outs of it. But in order for us to proceed, if you want to do business with me, you got to sign it over,
Yep.
so that we can
Yep.
go ahead and get it done the right way. So that's always the caveat, because I always get people who kind of, do an eye roll about, oh, you're just poaching business instead of earning it the old fashioned way. It's like, no, it's relationship building. If they prefer to work with me,
Yeah.
then who am I to get in their way?
Yes. Yes. Well, yeah, and I think a lot of people forget that. Like when you do take a BOR, you're inheriting someone else's sins potentially, right? So, your E&O immediately is on the line as soon as that BOR is effective too. So
Yes.
it's your job to make sure to clean up the mess as quickly as possible after you're given it. So it's not like it doesn't take any work. It's just
Yes.
that the work is a little bit different and maybe less stressful in terms of that kind of like competition piece of it or duking it out. Um,
Exactly.
all right, I'm gonna go. So this guy actually, he's not in the P&C world. He is technically in the insurance world. And I don't know if you've ever heard of him. He's actually an Iranian entrepreneur. So he's from Iran originally. Came over to the United States. I believe he served time in the armed forces, and he runs right now a life insurance sales organization company that is almost completely decentralized. So it has a national footprint, but it's all life insurance sales. That's what he deals in. But what he also does alongside of that is he has a pretty successful podcast vlog brand that he puts out there called Valuetainment. The guy's name is Patrick Bet David. He does take a political slant on a lot of his stuff, so he does slant conservative. So, if you do check out the valuetainment piece of it, I would definitely say that, you're going to get some political talk. So, but besides that, he is extremely, how should I put it? He's extremely common sense. He definitely fits into that block of, the more kind of type A hunter, killer, gatherer mindset. So that is kind of the space he lives in. But his thought process, I always thought was really interesting because to me it was the marrying of the new way of doing business with the old school, grind it out, kind of like smile and dial type
Mm.
mentality. And
Mhm.
so he tries to pair those two together, where it's one part, just kind of like onto the next, onto the next, onto the next. And then the other piece of it is the use of technology, decentralizing the organization, making it lean and mean and efficient and everything like that. And he does a fantastic job of branding himself because he has so much working for him. I mean, like being someone who immigrated from not just another country, but a country like Iran, and being
Oh
able to
yeah.
draw, stark contrast between those just economic, disparities or
Mhm.
differences between those places. And then also, having served in the armed forces, he has that kind of mentality and that kind of training and conditioning built into him. And then he's also an extremely avid reader, like
Okay.
incredibly avid reader. And so he just voraciously reads books of all different types, but specifically, like, I mean, a number of his podcasts that are not necessarily sales based, but he has a ton of them where it's like, my top 10 books of like this year. And I'm like,
Mm.
I'm talking about the top 10 books of my life. And this dude's like the top
Lifetime.
10 books that I read this year. I'm like, what?
Wow.
But yeah, so he's absolutely, he has a pretty impressive countenance to
Mhm.
him in terms of the way that he presents too, which is also part of that, compelling piece of it. And I can throw up his about page here. So if anyone hasn't seen him, he's pretty good in terms of like his presentation. Obviously, you can see, him on the boat with the scotch and the cigar. Like he's that mentality. But quite frankly, with what he does, I mean, he's earned it because there's a ton that he puts out, and he has a great team too. So his team is just
Awesome.
churning out content all the time. So yeah, really really decent. I don't know. Had you ever come across him? Had you ever heard his name
Mm-mm.
before?
No, I've got
Yeah.
that jotted down here to follow back up on. But yeah, I mean, like I said, constantly trying to, expand, tap into these rich sources of content. One of the things that this exercise really kind of brought to light is, I guess I haven't done as much of my homework that Amy Waninger had me do before in terms of expanding my network, diversifying my network. Um, because it was very, again, very insurance sales centric. And
Mhm.
so while that's obviously directly applicable to the life that I live,
Yeah.
you always want to be mindful that you're not creating these echo chambers
True.
where all you're hearing is, it's just bouncing off walls and coming right back to you.
Yeah.
And so, one of the platforms outside of LinkedIn, which I'm on, daily, and I'm pretty heavily, engaging on LinkedIn. But I went ahead about a year or two ago, and I put like TED Talks on my phone as an app.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
that, again, like you said, the time frames, right? So I'm hopping in my car, I know how long my commute's going to be. I'm like, cool, I'm good for, one or two of these, on my way.
Yeah.
And I love how you can go in and you can, sort it out according to content, right? Are you looking for inspiration, life lessons, business lessons, sales lessons? There's all these different categories, within there. So the next, what number are we on now? How many people?
I think so. We've done 8, so we have 2 slots left. You got.
Okay.
Hopefully, this is a good one. I'm just saying.
So this nod, this next song is dedicated to.
Yeah.
So Cheryl Hickerson, Females in Finance.
Okay.
So Females in Finance, again, another phenomenal group. Her audience is, insurance still falls within financial services, for most intents and purposes.
Hmm.
But really, again, catering to and tapping into as a finance or an insurance professional in this space, really the market that exists in terms of selling to women. On the
Hmm.
financial product side, that's a huge thing, right? Because when you think about how many dollars are controlled in households and businesses and things, especially when it comes to like retirement purchases, how do you connect in a way that's really genuine and authentic?
Yep.
So, again, the network that she has, the connections that she has, the very holistic approach to understanding that as professionals, belonging to finding your tribe, if you will,
Yeah.
belonging to a network or group where there's also some synergy and some, kind of cross connectivity, because there's going to be things inevitably that are going to come up that are outside of scope for me in insurance and risk management. And so if I'm plugged into a group that I know has already kind of vetted and aggregated contacts for folks that, specialize in some of these other areas that are outside of my scope, but still directly, related and applicable. So I'm connected with her actually on Facebook. There's a growing Facebook community as well. And so, obviously the name sounds like it's just kind of exclusively, of women, but it's not. And so, like, if you visit their site, you'll see that they have like a male ally that they feature, on an ongoing basis as well, because there's nothing wrong with having a specialty or a niche, right? So, oftentimes when it's brought up, it's looked at as if it's somehow trying to exclude others versus, focusing on, again, any clever marketing, you got to have a focus, because if you're just throwing stuff out there and you don't have an intended audience, that's just a waste of resources. So yeah, I love the things that she does, and, that network continues to grow, and that's one that I'm definitely plugged into.
Yeah. No, I've seen her talk somewhere, but I don't recall where. It was on someone's podcast or another content creator's platform, but I know I've seen her talk before, and I remember her being extremely engaging and passionate about what she was talking about. I love the fact that her podcast is called The F Word, though some people might be disappointed when they turn it on. Yeah, this is not what I signed up for. But masterful marketing as far as that goes. But yeah, no, I can remember just from her face, remembering the way that she talks. That's the other thing that's really interesting is I think there's a lot of people that I come across, whether they're influencers or even people in real life, where they just have such a distinct way of executing speech and presenting points and things like that, that when I see their face, I can hear their voice in my ears. Like, it's really weird. Or so much so that, like, if I see a quote from them, like, I read it in their voice.
Yes.
Yes, yeah. It's really weird, but I can almost say that I probably know, like, what her voice sounds like and everything like that just by seeing her picture, because I've seen her in other content. But yeah, no, that's a really good one. So she did. Do you recall what her TED Talk was on, or did she do multiple?
I don't know if Cheryl has done a TED Talk or not. I know that there are some, again, kind of related content in that vein. But again, I was connected to her, like you said, all of these, in the insurance world, what is the saying about 6 degrees of separation?
Yes,
Finance and insurance is like 3, I think, 2.5. So yeah, I just mentioned again the TED Talks thing, because I hear that a lot sometimes from people that social media is not their cup of tea. They don't like necessarily being the poster, putting engagement out there, and they like to kind of follow. And so TED Talk, and again, the fact that they had an app, I didn't just have to run it off of my the web browser, and I was able to go on there and sort and filter for whatever it takes to whet your appetite, right? However you get the content, just plugging into things that help kind of elevate your way of thinking is really, I think, the overarching theme here.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I'm a huge fan of just the TED Talk, like mechanism of presentation and style, and I have the app on my phone as well. So when I don't want to sit down and watch something that's vapid on Netflix, I will definitely open up the app and just like you said, kind of like filter for something, whether it's inspiration or science and technology related or something like that. So yeah, no, I love that. All right, so we have one slot left. I think I also have I have not an honorable mention. I think like a very important mention that I don't know. So I don't know if he's still watching. So he'll be number 11. Okay, I think we both know who I'm talking about. All right, but so I want to give one in the top 10 that is not like a home team kind of recommendation, and then we can talk about the last one. So let's see, which one do I want to pull here? All right, here's the one I want to talk about is Brian Falchuk. So Brian, very close to the insurance world, involved in the insurance world, but Brian as an influencer nowadays is less so an insurance influencer as he is just kind of like a motivational speaker and kind of like life coach and that kind of thing.
Agreed.
So and he's gonna kill me because I forget what he has. Basically, this kind of like step by step kind of talk and program, and I believe it's also a book. But it's kind of like this lifestyle. How to, like a very kind of piecewise. But his big thing is in his life, he's lost a ton of weight, been extremely physically active and stuff like that, and done some incredible stuff in that area. He's had, instances where, there's been life-threatening things that have happened, and he just kind of brings it all into context of, live your best life, continue striving to be better because, if you're not, then you're not living your best life, and just really kind of motivational. And what's also great is he comes from the claim side. So even though he's in the insurance world, he comes from the claim side of things, and he's done some presentations he's also very, how should I put it? Like, he has a soft spot in his heart for the CPCUs and the CPCU Society. So,
Yes.
He's done some presentations for different CPCU chapters and things like that. And he doesn't, he doesn't basically put all kinds of stipulations on it. Like, he makes himself available, which is absolutely fantastic. But let me just pull up his website so I'm showing people. But have you engaged much with Brian?
Not directly. It's
Okay.
really interesting because, like you said, I follow, his content. Obviously tons of mutual connections, especially via the CPCU Society. Love his stuff. Everything that I've seen. Like you said, I think your, summation is spot on. But yeah, like I said, I just like see you pass someone so often. I feel like I know him.
Yeah.
Maybe this ought to be a catalyst for me to actually reach out and be like, "Hey, what's going on? I see you, and I know you've seen me coming and going. But yeah, let's connect." So, but yeah, the backstory, I mean, it's just amazing, and like I said, it's all around, good human being. So you can't surround yourself with too many of those.
Oh yeah, most definitely. And he's tapped into a lot of different worlds too. So it's like he's also like an entrepreneur. So he's started and been a part of and continues to be a part of one or two companies as well. So he also has that financial entrepreneurial background to him as well. So it's Brian's extremely well rounded in the information and stuff, whereas some of these influencers are extremely like kind of like laser targeted on certain things. Brian, being that inspirational life coach kind of person, is bringing in a lot of things from different places, which is great, so that it's not always this just kind of like, oh man, the 19th time I've heard this person talk about like this sales technique or whatever. Yes, so I think that keeps it interesting too. So all right, we have to gush. He may be back on, I don't know. We left it to the end because we just couldn't. I couldn't give him the satisfaction of being like the first one that we talk about. But you know who I'm talking about, right?
Oh, there's only one. Yes.
Yeah, there is only one.
One.
Yeah.
The connector of all things insurance.
Yes.
The
Yeah.
Yeah. Anytime I need a door open, anytime
Yeah.
I need to bounce an idea, but I'll give you the distinct honor here.
Okay, so
perked up yet, so I don't know if he's still on with this.
I did mention him early because I have been on Profiles and Risk, and I believe you've been on one or two episodes as well.
Actually, I have not. I've not. Been
Oh my God! Oh, this is an egregious violation that we need to rectify here. We need Precious to be on Profiles and Risk here sometime in the near future. But so one of the founding members, if not the founding member of the Insurance Nerds, Tony Kanyas, is one of our most supportive and consistent listeners, watchers, commenters, as well as co-content creator. And so I think we would be remiss not to include him in the top 10/11 that we're talking about here. And for me personally, really Tony's influence is, as I kind of like started off with Ryan Hanley talking about, millennials and coming at sales from a different approach. Tony approaches the hiring and kind of the informational like recruiting that's done at the very grassroots level to get, high quality young folks into the industry. And so that can't be understated in terms of just the the demographic shifts that we're going to have and are having right now within the industry. And so that's the one thing that just always stuck out to me, not to mention the fact that he was doing this stuff way before I was doing any of this stuff, and he was an inspiration because it was a real world person right in front of me that I got to meet and shake the hands with and buy dinner and pick his brain and stuff like that he was doing it. And so I felt like, you know what, if Tony's here and he can do it, then I can also, dip my toe in that water and be successful as long as I kind of like grind it out like him. So he's had a big influence on just, what I do on a day-to-day basis and kind of how I combat things. I forget, like, what's your and Tony's origin story? Like, where did you kind of connect?
So I first met Tony in Baltimore during Leadership Summit for the CPCU Society. And I remember when I saw him, I'm like, who is this guy, this whole Superman getup that I just kind of see like running through here? I was like, is he even part of our conference?
Yeah.
Or is he just here in the convention center? Like, I don't know, what his deal is, what is his angle. And so during, again, one of the meet and greets, because you don't go to a CPCU function where Tony's president and not, cross his path in some form or fashion. No. So I think back then, we kind of doing the, typical, what chapter, what do you do, who do you work for? And back then I was working, with another insurtech company. And he was like, oh, no, come sit. Like, let me pick your brain. Let's talk. Because I don't think there were any other CPCUs that I've met from, that organization.
Yep.
That's really kind of how we started chatting. But, to your point, again, he is one of those names that's really just, synonymous, in this space with, if you know someone in insurance, chances are they know him. And so he's been phenomenal in terms of just, being supportive, being willing to, share and leverage his network to open doors, which is huge. There's been, what year was it? 2019, I guess. He had posted something where he was looking for speakers for the Insurance Day at the Gamma Iota Sigma conference that was being held here in Dallas. So I raised my hand. I'll say, hey, I'll do it. I didn't expect to get picked. but he did. He reached out to me and, we made that happen. And so, I'm just, super excited to continue to watch his trajectory as he continues to grow, continues to advocate very heavily for the insurance industry, in this space. And, careers and insurance is really what he does. So that is also another one of those videos, like every morning, I've got the reminder set. And he'll be the first to say that he doesn't do much in the agency space. I think he's going to have to stop saying that soon. Yeah. He's spoken to enough of us, and he's got enough of us in his circle now. Yeah, so he likes to very, consistently kind of have that space, that distance himself from, the agent broker arena. But no, he's definitely honorary agent broker. So we got to include him. Absolutely.
We'll adopt him. It's okay. It's all right.
Cool kids. It's fine.
So with that, we have our 10+1. So to go back over it, we got Gary V, Ryan Hanley, Meg Mckee, Dale Carnegie, Kelly Donahue Pyro, I think it's Pyro, Simon Sinek, Charles Spect, Patrick Bet-David, Cheryl Hickerson, Ryan Falchuk, and the incomparable Tony Conyas to round it all out. So that is a hell of a list. You could just watch that all day long and not get anything done, but you'll be extremely well informed and prepared eventually to sell. So that's it. So that's awesome. We got a little bit of a late start, but thank you for those who kind of stuck with us. And I think this was a lot of fun. I like. How did you like it, Precious? I like having kind of like a fun little, just kind of like throw in episode every so often.
I think so, and also if there's anything specific interest, there's a couple people that I follow on LinkedIn, and they actually use polls to get feedback on like, hey, what do you want our next thing to be? And
Yep.
so it doesn't have to be an official poll. If you've got a recommendation, if you want to come on and join us, the invitation is extended. We'd love to have you, and we want to make sure we keep bringing content that's going to resonate with you and be of value.
Yeah, 100%. You might make the next time we do this list. You might make that next list if you come on here and get your start as well.
There
So
you
that's
go.
another way to think about it. So,
Yes.
but yeah, thank you everyone. I appreciate it. We will be here next Wednesday at 3 p.m. Assuming that there's not heaven and earth to move again. But yes, next Wednesday 3 p.m. Sell like a CPCU. Have a good evening.
See
Bye
ya.
all.